The Merry Pranksters, Chapter 8, Episode 1. We were well past Delmar when the thick purple haze began to thin. The oncoming headlights were flying by at a terrifying speed, leaving long, reverberating tracers like some drawn-out ayahuasca trip. Taking a soothing pull off the frozen bottle of Grey Goose I lifted from Cooper's, the vodka burns my throat so badly, I'm starting to deserve it. Suddenly I hear a dark, gravelly voice coming from the driver's seat, asking me, "So, where were the pranksters?" Once the fog has completely evaporated, I pass the frosty bottle over towards the voice, and it's only then that I notice that Barney's brother Mort is driving my Cadillac. This causes me to sit up straight, clear my throat, and acknowledge that if I'm going to make it out of this, I'd best get bright. Before I've completely ruled out surrendering to a panic attack, he flashes me a sidelong glance that says, "Chill out, Bo, you're fine," which could be read any number of unsettling ways. Based on the night we've had, I'm not dismissing the possibility that he has some telepathic access to my unraveling mind. The dark brim of his red Cardinals hat is pulled down low, casting a long shadow across his face. The jagged shape of his Adam's apple is the only thing on his black profile struggling to find its footing. I try to ignore the aggressive way he uses his thumb to skip through the 40 ounces of Freedom CD, as if the steering wheel of the Caddy doesn't even come with a standard control panel. For fear that he's reading my thoughts, I decide it's safer to ignore the blood dripping from his nose as well. When the CD is almost out of songs, I muster up the courage to ask him who the tall Mexican he keeps scrapping with is. I ask this neutrally, trying to conceal my true agenda, though I'm convinced he already knows how desperate I am for answers. He starts to tell me about a lackey he was locked up with in Fulton called Zeke. Though he speaks in riddles, mumbling inaudibly about seeing some mystical light up ahead, I managed to gather that this Zeke fella was not just a bad dude by prison standards, but excessively evil. If I remember the local headlines correctly, evil was a buzzword used to describe Mort back when his third-degree murder charge was bumped up to first. Following the release of the young girl's identity who was found dead in the back seat of his car with a needle sticking out of her arm, the public demanded a blood sacrifice. It was not a Cadillac. When he looks over at me for the first time, I look back, straight into his eyes, waiting, ready to hear the truth. What he tells me, however, are 52 ways to murder anyone, that Zeke must have moved up in the dope game from lackey to boss, and how the best way to lubricate a chainsaw is with honey. He mentions Fook, but never without including Gonzo, and even if only as an afterthought, the way he's painting the two of them as two edges of the same sword leaves me wildly unsatisfied. His voice hoarse and sinister, he tells me, "Hey, Bo, Fookie's Fook, man. You know he knows everybody. Same as Gonzo. Those cats are ate the fuck up, you know what I'm talking about?" And I'd be lying if I said I didn't. When he ejects the Sublime CD and tosses it casually from the open window, I hear a far-off whisper reminding me, nay, begging me to pay attention. But when Mort starts up with his rantings about some distant light that we're driving into, I have half a mind to buckle my seatbelt. After a while, he turns to me and asks if I have any Slayer. It's then that the face of a vampire, one who was ceremoniously licking another man's blood without spilling his beer less than an hour ago, causes an indescribable panic. It was one of those flashes, one that hits strong but falls off almost instantly, and I think it may have something to do with not being taken completely by surprise. Like I'd always known I'd see this light one day. As I'm thumbing through my music case, watching the speedometer quiver and steam like an angry kettle, I notice a green Mustang starting to gain on us. Revving its filthy engine, I can almost make out the man in the passenger seat before it falls back. I squint my eyes tightly, taking a deep, sobering swig, and settle on the Beastie Boys classic, Paul's Boutique. Skipping ahead to track 4, I'm watching in horror as the vibration from the bass pulsates the rear window from behind, and looking ahead, wonder if I don't see this elusive light that Morty seems to think we're driving towards. Rolling down the window, allowing the cold air to fill the car, it feels thick and sharp and smells like the city gas chamber. The mural that's being painted as we're weaving in and out of traffic, propelling past cars at an astonishing speed, contrasts against the dark backdrop. The splashing, automobile-shaped blues and juniper greens are rolling past us faster than a cannonball. The lyrics to Eggman are pulling me into a dimly lit tunnel on a wave of low frequency. I glance over at Mort's dark silhouette against the passing streetlight, wondering if he is picking up any of these signals. With the stream of blood now wiped clean from his lip, his knuckles clenched tightly around the steering wheel as the car begins to shake, I'm left wondering if he's not the one sending the signals out. Searching for one hint of recognition, for a single muscle on his face to show a sign of tension, I'm spinning out of control, egg dripping from the ceiling. The first Capitol exit creeps up on him like a freight train. I take a Marlboro from the pack and, once lit, casually mention that the eastbound traffic looks like a starship tearing into hyperspeed, and he tells me in a grisly, matter-of-fact way that he remembers the first time he was abducted. Gripping the wheel, he suddenly cuts a hard right from the far lane, bottoming out on the slope of the ramp. My anxiety spikes as Mort looks straight ahead, like an arrow aimed at an invisible target. There's a growing feeling like a strange delirium is beginning to take hold, and it has something to do with not taking this journey alone. What my eyes can see are crackling orange and white sparks shooting up from under the car, but when I turn my head to look at Mort, he sees something more. What he sees is a fire, like a flickering flame of a candle in a far-off window, calling him home. Something awaits us just on the other side of the horizon, just out of reach, and he not only sees it, but he just may have the balls to go chasing after it. The way he jerked the steering wheel all the way to the left with the web of his hand told me that things were beginning to fall apart. Fishtailing up the off-ramp, we evened out just as the signal changed from green to red. I read somewhere that the back-and-forth game of I know that you know that I know that you know is technically called common knowledge. Technically speaking, it's common knowledge that the light is no longer green, but a deadly shade of red. The CADDY roars a mighty roar and breaks into a full gallop. Just because I can't see the light, I tell myself, does not mean it isn't there. The less adventurous part of me tries to straw man an argument, warning him to slow down. My God, man, I'm thinking apathetically, what's gotten into you? There's nothing on the other side. That's not a light at the end of that tunnel, you fiend. That's a freight train.